At my brother's wedding, his bride told me to leave. I couldn't believe it. I stood there in my dress, feeling stunned and hurt. Mallory, my brother Derek's new wife, looked at me like I didn't belong. I froze for a moment, unsure if I should walk out or stay. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. Derek looked uncomfortable. He wanted to say something, but Mallory had that cold, controlling stare that stopped him. I felt betrayed. This was my brother, my family, and here I was being treated like an outsider on the most important day of his life. I stepped back and tried to calm my racing heart. I remembered how I had helped Derek and Mallory with some of the wedding costs, quietly paying for deposits and arrangements to make sure everything went smoothly. Suddenly, it hit me, I wasn't powerless. If she thought she could humiliate me, she was wrong. I had control over the payments, the vendors, everything she was counting on. I made a decision. I calmly called each vendor and canceled the bookings. The caterers, the venue, even the entertainment, everything stopped. Chaos erupted. Derek was shocked, guests were confused, and Mallory's face turned red with anger. She realized I wasn't someone to push around. I had taken my stand. That day, I learned that betrayal can turn into strength. When people try to make you feel small, sometimes the only way to be seen is to show them exactly what happens when you refuse to be ignored. Before the wedding, Derek and I were inseparable. We shared everything, childhood memories, family secrets, even small victories. He was always there to protect me, and I did my best to support him through every challenge. Growing up, life wasn't always easy, but we faced it together. I never imagined anyone could come between us. Mallory, Derek's fiancée, was different. From the start, she seemed obsessed with making everything perfect. She wanted control over every detail, from the flowers to the seating arrangements. At first, I tried to stay out of her way, hoping to keep the peace. But little things started piling up. She criticized how I dressed for the engagement party, questioned the way I handled simple tasks, and made sharp comments about my lifestyle. The tension grew quietly at first. Derek tried to smooth things over, telling me to ignore her moods, but it became harder each day. I noticed how she would twist his words, turning normal conversations into arguments. I tried to step back, thinking maybe I was overreacting, but her attitude only got sharper. I also remembered all the times I had helped Derek, fixing problems with his apartment, offering advice about work, even supporting him through personal setbacks. Mallory didn't seem to appreciate it. Instead, she acted like I was an obstacle she needed to remove. By the week of the wedding, every small clash felt magnified. I realized this wasn't just about minor disagreements. Mallory wanted to control everything and everyone around her. She couldn't tolerate anyone who reminded Derek of the life they had before her. And that's when I understood, the real battle wasn't just the wedding, it was about standing my ground without losing the bond one shared with my brother. The morning of the wedding, the venue looked like a dream. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, flowers lined every aisle, and the air smelled of fresh roses. I took a deep breath, hoping the day would be special for Derek, even if my heart already felt heavy. As I stepped inside, I saw Mallory waiting near the entrance. She leaned close to Derek and whispered something that made his face change instantly. I didn't hear the words, but I could feel the weight of them. Derek looked at me, and I noticed the hesitation in his eyes. I froze. My stomach dropped. Could she really be asking him to make me leave? I had spent so much time with Derek, always by his side, and now, in this moment, it felt like everything we shared didn't matter. Derek opened his mouth but didn't speak. His silence hit harder than words ever could. I felt a sharp ache in my chest, not just from embarrassment but from betrayal. This wasn't just anyone pushing me away, it was my own family. Guests began to notice the tension, whispers rising around us, but I couldn't focus on anything except the disbelief and hurt washing over me. I had come here to celebrate my brother, to be part of one of the happiest days of his life, and instead, I felt like I had been erased. The air between us grew colder, and I realized something had shifted. Derek's hesitation and Mallory's demand marked the start of a day that would change everything. My heart broke, but deep inside, a spark of determination began to form. Mallory stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. "Lena, you need to leave right now, or you'll ruin everything," she said, her words slicing through me like a knife. I could feel the eyes of distant relatives on us, their curiosity and surprise making the moment even worse. I froze for a second, unsure if I should argue or walk away. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I had never felt so small, so publicly rejected. The whispers of relatives filled the room, and I could hear the faint clinking of glasses and soft murmurs as everyone watched the drama unfold. A mix of anger and sadness welled up inside me. How could someone I had never wronged act this way, treating me like an intruder at my own brother's wedding? I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the sting of betrayal held me in place. For a moment, I let the shame settle in, but then something shifted. I refused to be powerless. I wouldn't allow her to control me or humiliate me without consequence. My mind raced with thoughts, ideas forming like sparks in the dark. Even as my heart ached, I made a silent vow: she couldn't push me out without feeling the weight of her actions. I would find a way to turn this around, to make her see that I wasn't someone to be dismissed so easily. As Mallory smirked, thinking she had won, I felt a quiet determination grow. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a story where I refused to be invisible, where betrayal would meet its reckoning, and where I would stand tall no matter what. I walked out of the hall, letting the soft hum of the city calm me for a moment. The cold air hit my face as I slid into my car, the door shutting out the chaos behind me. I needed a few minutes alone to think, to breathe, to make sense of everything that had just happened. As I sat there, my mind drifted back to the weeks leading up to this day. I had quietly helped Derek with so many things for the wedding, covering deposits, arranging vendors, and handling unexpected costs. No one knew I had been behind so much of the planning, but I had done it because I loved my brother and wanted him to be happy. And suddenly, it clicked. I wasn't just another guest who could be dismissed. I had been managing significant parts of the wedding behind the scenes. I had control over payments, bookings, and even contracts. If I wanted, I could change everything. A strange mix of clarity and determination filled me. I realized that the power Mallory thought she had over the day was an illusion. I had the ability to take action, to make her realize that pushing me aside came with consequences. I clenched my fists, feeling a spark of resolve ignite. I wouldn't let anger control me blindly, but I could use this moment wisely. The seeds of a plan formed in my mind, careful and calculated. It wouldn't be reckless, but it would ensure that my presence, and my value, couldn't be ignored. For the first time since stepping out, I felt in control. Betrayal had sparked something powerful, and I knew I wasn't done yet. This day would not end the way Mallory expected. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my wallet and checked my phone for bank records. I remembered every deposit I had made for the wedding, venue, catering, music, even small touches like extra decorations. Each payment had been under my name, quietly handled so Derek and Mallory wouldn't stress over it. As I scanned the statements, a realization hit me like a lightning strike. I wasn't just involved, I held the keys to the entire wedding. Every transaction, every deposit, every booking could be paused, cancelled, or redirected with a single call. The power I had never noticed before was suddenly mine. A wave of emotions washed over me. The hurt and humiliation from earlier now blended with a strange thrill. I felt strong, capable, and in control for the first time since Mallory had demanded I leave. The tables had shifted. I imagined the chaos I could create if I chose to act. Not recklessly, not out of blind anger, but carefully and with precision. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of anger, it was about showing that I couldn't be disregarded, dismissed, or humiliated without consequences. For the first time that day, I smiled quietly to myself. Betrayal had given me something unexpected, clarity. I could protect myself, assert my worth, and make sure my presence mattered, even if Mallory thought she had all the power. I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of confidence. The decisions I made in the next few moments could change everything. And I was ready. For once, the hurt would not define me. My control over the wedding, and over my own response, was complete. I unlocked my phone and started dialing numbers stored months ago. Each call felt heavy, yet steady. I explained there were unforeseen circumstances and that arrangements needed to be stopped immediately. Silence followed on the other end, then confusion. Some asked if I was serious. Others sounded annoyed. I repeated myself without raising my voice. One supplier warned me about penalties. Another reminded me of deadlines. I listened carefully, answered politely, and confirmed my identity. Every detail matched. Every agreement carried my signature. There was nothing they could do. One by one, confirmations arrived. Services were withdrawn. Schedules collapsed quietly. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed even. Inside, something had gone cold. Not cruel, not wild, controlled. This wasn't anger spilling out. This was balance returning. I had been pushed aside without thought, and now decisions were being made with the same calm indifference. A coordinator raised her tone, saying this would cause problems. I acknowledged it and ended the call. Another vendor tried to delay, suggesting alternatives. I declined. Each conversation ended the same way. Final. Clean. Done. Between calls, I stared through the windshield, watching people pass by, unaware of what was unfolding inside the hall behind me. A strange peace settled in. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't begging. I wasn't explaining myself to anyone. I was simply acting. When the last call ended, I placed the phone face down and rested my head against the seat. The weight I'd been carrying lifted. I knew the impact would be immediate. Confusion. Panic. Questions with no easy answers. What I felt wasn't joy. It was certainty. I had been forced into this corner, and I chose not to shrink. Calm decisions can be sharper than rage. And at that moment, I knew this quiet response would speak louder than anything I could have said out loud. Inside the hall, confusion spread quickly. Waiters walked in, apologizing, explaining that tables wouldn't be ready. Musicians were nowhere to be found. The florist arrived, shaking her head, saying she couldn't deliver on time. Derek's eyes widened as he tried to understand what was happening. Guests began murmuring, glances exchanged, voices low but filled with curiosity. Some whispered questions about why the ceremony seemed to unravel before it even started. I watched quietly from the side, my heart steady. Each reaction confirmed the change I had set in motion. Mallory's expression went from shock to panic. She rushed from group to group, demanding answers, gesturing frantically, but the damage was done. Her carefully built day was crumbling in front of her, and she had no control over it. Derek finally turned toward me, his face a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Lena, what did you do?" His voice shook slightly, trying to hide the embarrassment and anger from everyone watching. I took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. "You told me to leave," I said, keeping my tone calm and steady. "So I removed myself from this nightmare." The room went quieter for a moment as my words settled. Derek looked away, conflicted, realizing the truth behind what I had done. Guests continued to whisper, but I could see some nodding subtly, understanding that someone had taken a stand. Mallory's face flushed red, her hands trembling. She had no words, no plan to salvage the chaos. And I stood there, composed, knowing that every action I had taken was deliberate, justified, and necessary. For the first time, I felt completely in control, watching the consequences of betrayal unfold around the people who had tried to dismiss me. I found Mallory near the back exit, pacing frantically, her hands twisting the fabric of her dress. She froze when she saw me approach, a mix of anger and disbelief in her eyes. "Lena, what are you doing here?" she demanded, voice sharp, but there was a tremor beneath her confidence. I took a steady breath and met her gaze. "I'm here to talk about how you've treated me," I said calmly. All the whispers, the demands, the way you tried to erase me today, it wasn't just rude, it was unfair. You tried to control everything and push everyone aside, including me. Mallory's face went red, and her jaw tightened. You can't, this is my wedding. You don't get to do this. I shook my head slowly, feeling a strange mix of sadness and resolve. You don't understand. I wasn't trying to ruin anything for Derek. I was responding to how you treated me. You made it clear I wasn't welcome, so I acted accordingly. Everything is already set in motion, there's nothing you can do to undo it. Her fists clenched, but she didn't speak. She had no leverage, no plan to reverse the cancellations. I could see the frustration and fear building as she realized the vendors had complied and her perfect day was crumbling despite her efforts. For a moment, silence hung between us. I felt a bittersweet triumph. Victory didn't erase the hurt of being pushed aside, but it reminded me that I could protect myself and stand my ground. Finally, I turned away, letting her stew in the consequences. I had made my point. I had defended my worth. And though the day wasn't what she expected, I left knowing I had acted with dignity and strength. Derek stood in the middle of the hall, running a hand over his face. He had watched the chaos unfold, feeling a knot of anger and guilt tighten in his chest. Mallory's obsession with perfection had gone too far, and now it had driven a wedge between him and his sister. He replayed the moments in his head, the whisper, his hesitation, Lena's stunned expression. How had he let her be treated like that in front of everyone? His protective instincts had failed, and the realization stung more than any argument he had ever faced. Mallory rushed to him, trying to explain herself, her words tumbling out in panic. Derek barely heard them. He was too focused on Lena, imagining the hurt in her eyes and the pride she had shown despite everything. She had been pushed to the edge, and now the consequences were everywhere around them. Anger at Mallory mixed with frustration at himself. He should have spoken up. He should have made it clear that Lena's place was beside him, not outside, humiliated. Instead, he had let fear and hesitation dominate, and his sister had been forced to act in a way that shook the wedding to its core. Derek felt torn. His loyalty to Mallory, the woman he had chosen to marry, conflicted with the bond he shared with Lena, his sister, his family. Every instinct screamed that he needed to protect Lena, yet he also had commitments and promises that weighed heavily on his mind. In that moment, he realized the true cost of indecision. Relationships, trust, and respect could crumble in a single choice. And he knew that repairing the damage would take more than words, it would take action, courage, and a reckoning with the reality of what had just happened. Whispers traveled fast through the crowd. Relatives who had noticed tension before began connecting the dots, realizing how much Mallory had dictated every detail. Small complaints from vendors and subtle mishaps suddenly made sense. Her controlling nature, hidden behind charm and smiles, was now visible to everyone. Guests exchanged shocked glances, murmuring among themselves. People who had only arrived to celebrate were now witnessing the unraveling of a carefully orchestrated day. The once elegant venue now seemed chaotic, tables rearranged, schedules disrupted, services cancelled. Mallory's panic grew as she tried to explain, but her words only highlighted her obsession with control. I stayed back, observing quietly. The sense of vindication was strong but calm. I didn't need to speak or argue, the truth was unfolding on its own. Every action I had taken, every step I had planned, had revealed a side of her that could no longer hide behind perfection. Family members began exchanging sympathetic looks toward me, their earlier confusion replaced by understanding. They recognized that I hadn't caused this chaos out of spite, rather, it was the result of someone trying to dominate and manipulate the day at everyone else's expense. Mallory's frustration reached its peak. She realized that nothing could salvage the wedding exactly as she had envisioned. The collapse was public, undeniable, and inescapable. Watching it all, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Justice wasn't loud or explosive, it was precise, undeniable, and perfectly timed. The control she had wielded so ruthlessly backfired, and I remained composed, standing aside while her actions spoke for themselves. In that moment, I understood the power of restraint and timing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation, it's letting truth shine through, letting others witness the consequences of someone's own choices. After the chaos settled, I took a moment to breathe. The tension in the room began to ease, and I felt a quiet sense of peace. I had defended myself, acted with purpose, and refused to be dismissed. Standing tall, I realized that maintaining my dignity was victory enough. Derek approached me later, his expression a mix of relief and regret. "Lena," he said softly, "I should have stepped in. I'm sorry for not protecting you." His apology carried weight, and I could see he genuinely understood the courage it took for me to act. I nodded, accepting his words. The bond we shared had weathered a storm that could have broken us, but instead, it had grown stronger. Derek's acknowledgement reminded me that loyalty and love within family could overcome even the harshest trials. Other relatives approached as well, offering quiet words of support. Some confessed they had long felt uneasy with Mallory's controlling ways but had stayed silent. Their gratitude and understanding warmed me, showing that my stand had not only defended myself but also validated the feelings of others who had been overlooked or intimidated. In that moment, I felt empowered. I had turned a painful experience into a lesson in resilience. I had chosen action over silence, integrity over submission, and strength over fear. As I looked around the room, I realized that triumph didn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes, it came from remaining true to yourself, from standing firm when others tried to diminish you, and from knowing that your presence and voice mattered. For the first time that day, I smiled fully, knowing I had reclaimed my place, earned respect, and discovered my own inner strength. Later that evening, I sat alone in a quiet corner, letting the events of the day settle in my mind. I thought about the betrayal I had felt, the humiliation of being dismissed, and the careful steps I had taken to turn the situation around. Every emotion, the hurt, the anger, the determination, had shaped me in ways I hadn't expected. I realized how fragile family dynamics could be when someone tries to dominate or control. Loyalty, love, and respect were tested, and sometimes, the people who claim to protect you fail in the moments that matter most. But I also saw the strength that could rise from standing firm. The day had left me stronger than before. I had earned a quiet respect from Derek, from relatives who had doubted me, and even from myself. I no longer felt the need to shrink or apologize for existing. My voice mattered, and my actions carried weight. I smiled softly, understanding that confidence wasn't about asserting power over others, but about knowing your own worth. The lessons I had learned, about patience, timing, and self-respect, would stay with me forever. And I knew one truth above all: when people push you out, sometimes the only way to be truly seen is to take control and make them feel your absence. Betrayal had turned into clarity. Revenge had been measured and purposeful. And though the day had been painful, it had also been liberating. I left the wedding not broken, but whole, aware of my strength, aware of my limits, and ready to face whatever came next with courage and resolve. The experience had changed me, and I knew I would never let anyone diminish me again. Do you think I handled the situation the right way by standing my ground, or should I have stayed and tried to make peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more.